and dressed down to his underwear and went out on the porch to read the paper. This porch, in fact, the whole building was curiously constructed. Dr. Fuji was a purely Japanese institution, a private, single-doctor hospital. This building perched beside and over the water of the Kaio River and next to the bridge of the same name, contained 30 rooms for 30 patients and their kinfolk. For according to Japanese custom, when a person falls sick and hospital, one or more members of his family go and live there with him. To cook for him, bathe, massage, and read to him, and offer incessant sleep, without which a Japanese patient would be miserable indeed. The building where Dr. Fuji lived was queer-looking, but it was from the porch, which faced away from the center of the city. The prospect with pleasure boats drifting up and down it was always refreshing. Dr. Fuji sat down cross-legged in his underwear on the spotless matting, put on his glasses, and started reading the Osaka Asahi. He saw the news because his wife was there. He saw the flash. Startled, he began to rise to his feet. The hospital leaned behind his rising and, with a terrible ripping noise, toppled. Dr. Fuji hardly had time to think that he was dying before he realized that he was alive, squeezed tightly by two long timbers in his chest, like a morsel suspended between two huge chopsticks held upright so that he could not move, with his head miraculously above water and hicks in it. The remains of the hospital were all around him in the mad assortment of splintered lumber and materials for the relief. His left shoulder hurt terribly. His glasses...
Go.
The law of Dr. Fuji, Kanda, and Machi read after the explosion, and as these three were typical, that majority of the physicians and surgeons in Hiroshima, with their hospital destroyed, their equipment scattered, their own bodies incapacitated in varying degrees, explained citizens who were hurt went untended, and why so many who might have died.
Yeah. All right.
Dr. Masakuzu Fuji's hospital was no longer on the bank of the Kaio River in the river. After it overturned, Dr. Fuji was so stupefied and so tightly squeezed by the beams gripping his chest that he was unable to burst, and he hung there about 20 minutes in the darkened morning. Then a thought came which came to him that soon the tide would in through the statuaries and his head would be glad and hit what strength he could. He wriggled, and before long, he had freed himself from Dr. Fuji, who was in his underwear, was now soaking and dirty. His undershirt blood ran down it from bad cuts on his chin and back. In Sari, he walked onto the Kaio Bridge, beside which his hospital had stood. The bridge had not collapsed, only fuzzily without his glasses, but he could see enough to be amazed of houses that were down all around.
No, you gotta see this. 4 minutes, check it out. Whoa.
It's recording, you didn't.
Huh?
On the bridge, he encountered a friend, a doctor named Machi, and asked in bewilderment. On the bridge, he encountered a friend named Machi, and asked in bewilderment,
"What do you think it was?"
Dr. Machi said,
It must have been a cargo. Show them the video.
asked.
Why do you suppose it is?
Dr. Machi said,
Perhaps it was a Malta flower basket.
A nurse hanging in the timbers of his hospital by her legs. And then another painfully pinned across the breast.
Dr. Fuji was still pursued by bad luck, which still was connected.
Here his injuries seemed to make good progress, and he even began to treat refugees who came to him from the neighborhood. Using medical supplies he had retrieved from a cache in the suburbs. He noticed in some of his patients a curious syndrome and symptoms that cropped out into the third or fourth, but he was not able to do much more than cure the cuts and burns.
Early in September, it began to rain steadily and heavily.